Welcome to the For Love and Money podcast, the show where business and social purpose meet to inspire a movement for positive change. Here's your host, Carolyn Butler-Madden.
My guest on this episode of For Love and Money is a man who describes himself as a 4-time loser before he realised he was in the wrong game. He is Dave Dahl, creator of Dave's Killer Bread. And if you haven't heard of Dave's Killer Bread, I can't wait to share the story behind it. If you have, then you know you'll want to listen to this episode. Dave's story is the story of Dave's Killer Bread. It's a story of transformation and inspiration. Dave's Killer Bread has a purpose behind every loaf. It's not as well known as some other purpose-led brands like Patagonia or Zambrero, and yet every time I share a bit of this story, people connect with it and they want to learn more. Its power, I believe, is that it is a very human story, quite the antithesis of what we have come to expect of business. But before we kick off, I'm asking a question of every guest on this podcast, and that is, do you believe there's a role for love in business?
Love is such a hard to define thing. I mean, there's so many different definitions of love, right? Wow. For me, love is very complicated. So I'm not sure how to answer that.
Okay, all right. That's a really honest answer, and maybe we come back to it towards
yes, of course. Yes,
during the podcast. And you're absolutely right.
Yes.
But do you know what? You're absolutely right, because I think it makes a lot of people uncomfortable, the idea of love in business, because love is so personal, it's so intimate. And yet, how often do we say, oh my God, I love that. I love what I love that brand. I love that business. I love what that person's doing. I love my job. And
I get what you're saying. Yeah, I do understand from that angle what it is. But I get, when I hear the word love, I just get a little bit like, wow, what is that? It means a lot of different things to me.
Yeah.
So that's my issue is that.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us your story. Can you go back, obviously, to your childhood, and the very seeds of your story? Can you take us through your early days, Dave?
Well, I wish I could say that I was a tough guy when I was a kid, but I wasn't. And I was kind of a knucklehead when I figured out that my Seventh-day Adventist upbringing wasn't working out for me. Seventh-day Adventist is I don't want to say cultish, but sort of, cultish mentality, and it wasn't working. And I decided that I needed to find some solution to that. And basically, I was very low self-esteem, didn't like myself much, didn't believe in anything, so I had to go out and figure it out. And that was my teenage years, right? And that meant a lot of alcohol, a lot of, other drugs. But it wasn't until I was like 21 or so that I started, that I put a needle full of methamphetamine in my arm. And that was kind of like the first drug that it helped me realize that I could actually transform my life. And I'm not saying it's a way to transform your life, but it really did transform my life into a bad thing.
Yeah, okay. And so your family background, family bakery in Portland, Oregon, is that right?
Yes. Yep.
So that needle in your arm, where did that lead you? I believe you ended up in the prison system not more than once.
I went to prison 4 times, all because I was trying to be a really good drug addict. And I went, I just loved methamphetamine. So it was like the only thing that made me feel good. So I kept doing the meth. And went to prison for burglary, armed robbery, other robberies, and drug dealing, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I did 15 years.
Yeah, wow. And what was it? I was reading something or listening to another podcast interview, and you said something that really struck me, that you were curious, like you were always questioning why things were the way they were. Is it that curiosity and that sort of challenging aspect of you that sort of led you to reject your family's business?
I was curious. I was like, well, in those early days, I just started reading the Bible and stuff, and I was like, this whole thing doesn't make sense to me. That's all. It's one of those things. I imagine with politics, everything that you look at in life, uh, when you find out that it's not what you believe, then you are in a situation, where you have to do something. And that's what I did.
Mm.
And that was at about the age of like 12 or 13.
And that must have been very isolating when you feel that you are not on the same wavelength as your family and close friends of the family.
That's a perfect way of putting it. Yes.
Yeah.
I was very isolated, and I don't know. I never felt good about it in those days. It was like, I don't belong anywhere.
Mm. So you turned to alcohol. The next step was drugs and hard drugs.
Alcohol never really had that. I would get drunk and stuff, and I would do stupid things. But yeah, it wasn't until I was like 21 years old that I found the meth.
Yeah, okay. So 4 times in prison. Over what period was that, Dave?
That was a period from like the mid 80s to 2005.
Wow. Okay. So lots of in and out over that time.
I was in there a lot. Yeah.
And how was that prison experience for you? I mean, you felt isolated out there before you hit the prison system. Was it just as isolating within it?
I was always isolated. I always felt isolated. I just never. It's such a great question. What are you, a shrink?
No, not even close.
I'm just like, wow, it's a great question. I have always felt isolated, but it wasn't really until I got out this last time, and in 2000, I don't know. It wasn't until I had a purpose in life that things made difference. The purpose I had in prison in 2001, when I went to school for drafting, that was like the beginning of me realizing that I belonged in the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
wow.
it was drafting, it was medication, the medication first, but in order for me to get the medication, I had to wave the white flag and ask for some help. So, it's absolutely bizarre that this happened, because I was suicidal before that.
Mm. And so you were struggling with depression, but you didn't know it.
Well, yeah, maybe I thought I had depression, but to me, uh, why wouldn't you be depressed when your life sucks?
Mm.
So, in the inverse is better. Is like, why would you? You need to be appreciative of your life, and you don't have depression. But if you're capable of seeing that your mind can be messed up, and then you're depressed, rather than being depressed and your life resulting from that.
So you said things didn't change until you found your purpose in prison. So what I'm curious to understand is, were you on medication? So, and this was a program within prison that allowed you to do drafting?
Yes, it was a rare program. I don't even think it exists anymore. I waited for 3+ years to get into this program, and yet if I had gotten into it any earlier, I probably wouldn't have been ready for it. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting. There's a lot of dynamics to it that I would love to talk about if you ask me.
Yeah, no, I'd love you to share it, and I'd love to understand as well. Were you on medication before you started the program?
Yes, just before I got into medication, which, see, I don't know how much the medication had to do with it, how much of it just was reaching out, and how much of it was going to school. I mean, all those things worked out for me.
Yeah, okay. Which is good news for you and good news for many other people as well. So you did drafting, I believe. Within that, you also learned about design thinking.
Well, as a drafter, you really have to learn design. I mean, otherwise you're going to suck as a drafter, right? But designing it's like everything in life. Everything you do in life, you're designing your life, right? Um, you can design anything when you look around at every object around you. You can say, well, I'm going to design that. I'm going to make it a little bit better. So the first thing you're going to have to do is figure out how to make it the way it is. Okay, the first thing I would have to do is go, okay, how am I going to make this chair first? And there's several things I got to figure out to make that happen. But then how am I going to make it better?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what design is all about. You have to reverse engineer. That sounds crazy. It sounds a little like a lot, but it's not. You have to figure out why it is that this chair exists. Why do people care about this chair? And what is it about this chair that's great? And what is wrong with this chair? And so that's what I learned. And
And
drawing and computer aided drafting, I got an opportunity to create all this stuff in 3D space, which
wow.
blew me
Yeah.
away. And I was able to modify it. Like I could modify it 10 ways in an hour. You know what I mean? That's how cool it was.
And how did that change things for you?
I think it gave me perspective that most people don't have. I think I was very fortunate in that regard. A lot of people would just go, "Oh, this is just a computer program. I'm going to push some buttons and all this kind of stuff." But for me, it was it was super exciting because, well, I guess maybe partly because I'm sort of an artist anyway, but uh, I've always been a creative person. But I think everybody could get something strong out of it. I'm not sure that everybody could get what I got, but they could. Everybody's got the same potential to make the most of a situation. So that's when I did it. It was like I would draw a table, and next thing you know, I'm drawing a table that's a little bit better than the table that I drew.
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant.
It was
So
fun.
so that opened doors in your mind about how you felt about life, about yourself, about the future.
Yes. And designing, I think if there's anything that I would like to give people, it's the ability to understand. If I could bottle and sell it or even give it away, I would just want to give people the knowledge that they can draft their life, design their life. They're gonna fall and get up, and it's just part of the process. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that's a very it's a very wise gift, I think, because it's also, given your life's journey, we all seem to think that life is supposed to be perfect and seamless, and yet it's often in the down times that you learn about yourself, the ebbs and flows. I'm not saying it was, I'm not suggesting it would have been fun to go through, but the experience that you've had through your life has allowed you to see things in a certain way and to
Yes.
change things. And at the end of the day, isn't that what being here is about? Creating some kind of change, making something better?
Well, I think so. But in my first 38 years, I didn't understand that. So I didn't understand that life was about that. There was one of the things I like to tell people when I get in the mood is, you know, giving back, for instance. We talk about giving back in the sense of you give back because you want to help people or help the world or whatever, right? If you don't have anything to give back, you can't give back.
Yep.
I never thought about giving back until I had something to give back. You get what I'm saying? And
Yep.
that's essentially what it is. It's like, but once I did have something to give back, I'm like, well, that's really what I'm doing right now. I'm talking to you. I'm not doing this for money or anything like that. I just feel like if somebody wants to hear the knowledge that I have or the wisdom that I have, then I want to give it.
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant. So let's fast forward to you come out of prison, and is it your brother opens the door to the family business?
Yes, my
So
brother is like 8 years older than me. Yeah.
okay, all right. So can you tell us about that next period for you?
Well, I got out of prison, but before I got out, I had already done this. A lot of searching, a lot of discovery with the drafting and everything, and the medication and all that. So uh, I, I was having conversations with my brother, and he was running the company that my dad had started back in 1955. It wasn't like this big old, money making conglomerate or whatever. I don't. It
Family
wasn't.
business, right?
It was a little family business, and my brother was making it work, and he was
Yeah.
working his ass off to make it work. Right. I just told him that, hey, look, I feel like I can come back and help the business, and that I can have my part in the business, right? And so that was really what the agreement that we came to. So I got out, put me to work for $12 an hour, and almost immediately I was making $12 an hour, which is, it's a lot of people would say that's crazy. How do you survive on that? But I had my mom
Mm-hmm.
too at that time. She's not around anymore, but she had a garage. She had a small house and she had a garage, and I was able to stay in her garage. I think it's important to point that out, that you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
But I was very happy living in her garage. I didn't have a car immediately, but I was able to work myself into a car. But at $12 an hour, I was working for that, and I was getting paid for 40. I asked my brother, pay me 15. Eventually, I said, pay me 15 an hour. I'll work for 40. I'll get paid for 40 and I'll work 80.
Yep.
Something like that.
Yep.
Something like that, because I did have an opportunity. I
Family
didn't know.
negotiations, right?
Yeah. And so I had a good time. But I went to work, and when I was done with my regular shift, I would go and get out the scales and the whatever, all the different equipment I needed, little mixer and everything. And I would just keep experimenting, and that's essentially what I did with Dave's Killer Bread. And I had like I said earlier, it's that reverse engineering. And my brother told me at some point, he goes, "Well, stop messing with cookies," because he wanted me to do cookies. And I was like, and I did the cookies, but then that was quick work. And then he said, "Well, we need bread. That's what we do. We make bread."
Yeah.
And and I'm like, "Oh shit, bread, bread." Yeah, it's a whole different game, right? A whole different game. And so I started reverse engineering. That word sounds way more crazy than it really is, but learning how to make other people's products.
Yeah.
And then figuring out what it is about those products that were great, and then going, well, what would make them better? And that's essentially just the same thing I've been doing in drafting. And it
Yeah.
worked out. It worked out.
So tell us about the first bread, Portland Farmers Market. Was it that you launched it?
Yeah, it was, again, it's another great opportunity that I had in my life. I've had a couple. That was one, because what they had is the Portland Farmers Market's a pretty big deal, right? In our area. It's like 100, 150 vendors, that kind of thing. And it's very hard to get into it.
Yeah.
I can't just like make some bread and go down there and, hey, I want to get into this market. So what it was is I had been working on some products. I had 6 varieties ready to go, but I decided to go with 4. That particular, but they had this summer loaf, they called it, where it's so bizarre, really. I mean, so unusual. They had artisan bread festival, and everybody there was a bread maker. So bizarre. But at that time, I think there was a lot of people that were into making artisan bread. Mine was nothing like theirs. I brought my bread in. It was like the only sandwich bread that we brought in, and we just killed it. Everybody was just like, "Oh my god!" And that summer loaf was not around the next year. It's bizarre how it was available at that time when we needed it.
So what was it about the bread that people loved?
Well, there's several things. It's really hard to actually define that, but I can tell you what made it. What I was aiming for was texture, a lot of texture. You find it in European breads, dense European breads and stuff like that, where it's a real good texture. A lot of density, a lot of chew. But what I did is I took, and I guess I'd always wanted to do this since I was a kid, is make bread more like a bowl of really good cereal.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. If you like grainy cereal like I do, grainy, like say not cream of wheat, but cracked wheat cereal.
Yeah.
Uh, and then oatmeal that's not overcooked. When you get a lot of chew and stuff like that. So that was essentially what I was working with. That was the mentality. And then it took so much experimentation to make that into an actual loaf of bread, because that's it kind of goes against what people think of as when they're making bread. They're like, how much dead weight can I add to a loaf of bread? But that was
Yeah.
what I was thinking. How much
Yeah.
dead weight can I add to a loaf of bread?
Wow. So the bread was a big success at the farmers market, Portland Farmers Market. And this bread is what you call the summer loaf?
Well, the festival
Oh, right.
or whatever, the event was called the Summer Loaf.
Okay.
And we were so fortunate to have that opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, because that didn't happen again
No,
the following
it
year.
was, yeah, it was off the hook. It's crazy.
Amazing. Maybe the universe dropped that one down there for
That's
you.
what I'm thinking. Yeah.
And so what happened then? So right now you're operating under the family bakery name?
Are you talking about back then?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was Dave's Killer Bread, and
Oh, it
my
was called
brother.
Dave's Killer Bread then.
It was my brother wanted to call it Dave's Bread,
Yeah.
and I was like, well, okay, but then, which was interesting to me because I'm a narcissist, so it was all good. But he was like, Dave's Bread, and I'm like, okay, no, Dave's Bread, but that's really okay. So how people are gonna want to know who Dave is, right?
Yep.
And so then I knew I had to write my story on the back of the bag, and somehow this stuff is it's like it's religious. It's amazing how that it comes to you when it comes to you. But I wrote my story on the back of the bag. It's not there anymore. The original story is not there anymore.
Okay.
I think the original story was much better than the one they have now, but that's just my opinion. So anyway,
Can you tell us the original story? Because you
well,
would have
basically,
encapsulated it in a paragraph, right?
yeah, it was like 3 or 4 paragraphs, but essentially it was like I was a 4-time loser before I realized I was in the wrong game. Okay, that's how it started out. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and then I talked about, you know, I've been knucklehead most of my life. Didn't use that word, but I'm paraphrasing. And then I go 2 or 3 paragraphs of talking about the changes that I made while I was in prison, and so on and so forth, so on and so forth. And then I just talk about I'm just honest ex-con trying to make the world a better place, one loaf of bread at a time. I'm just but the story, it took me a long time to write the story. So for me to try to encapsulate it right here, but at the moment, I mean, it took me a long time. I remember I'd be driving down the road, looking over here, looking over there. All of a sudden, something would hit me, and that story worked very well. But it's not just a story; it's the story led to the bread, and the bread made the story. So
Well, the two are intertwined, aren't they? I mean, you can't
absolutely,
separate one from the other.
I think you're right. Exactly right. People are like, well, was it the bread? No. Yes. Was it the story? No. Yes. You know what I mean? They
Uh,
all work together.
Absolutely. And I know in my work, I have this conversation a lot with clients is that when you have a brand that has, or a business that has a social purpose, you can't expect that to be the sole driver of success of the
That's right.
business. The
That would be a
business,
terrible idea. I think that would
no,
be a terrible idea.
that's charity, right?
It, it
Whereas,
matters. It matters. But
yes,
yeah,
yeah, and the business has to stand on its own 2 feet on whatever its proposition is. If it's quality, it's got to stand on quality. The
but quality is
changing.
very, I think you have to have, I think that's essential, at least from my experience, it's got to be, the product itself has to be good. Really,
Absolutely.
it may be better than good. It's got to be exceptional on
Yeah.
some level. But if you have some sort of, like, in my case, everything came from the heart, and um, I just did it because I felt it. You know what I mean? So I'm not sure everybody's got that luxury, but then again, they didn't go what I went through
Yeah.
to get there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so Dave, that Dave's Killer Bread for people, for listeners in Australia who don't know Dave's Killer Bread, it is it the best-selling organic bread in the USA?
Yes.
And
That
it's
I can.
also sold in other countries.
It is sold. It's sold and made all over North America. It's made in. I mean, this is stuff I find out on my own. Nobody tells me, but it's available and made in Mexico. It's also made in Canada and sold.
That's incredible. Just how you went from having a family bakery that was doing it tough to such a success story. But what I'd love you to share is, I mean, that story alone, based on your second chance and making good on your second chance, is incredible and really powerful. But it goes further than that. And I'd love to bring in at this point the story around second chance employment. Can you tell us about that?
Love that. Well, I love that. I never intended it. I never really thought about that. I've always been, and my family is. I'll give them credit. Has always believed in second chances. They gave me one, maybe like a lot more than one, and I I was able to because of understanding. A lot of people who have suffered a lot and made a lot of mistakes and screwed up a lot. Um, they get to a point where they are motivated to change and motivated to impress and to do good. Uh, doesn't happen to everybody, but there's a lot of people who, really trying to make a difference. And so that's essentially what it was. In the early days, we didn't have 300 employees. We ended up having 300 before I left in that spot. But in the early days, we were just going, let's give this guy a chance because he seems like a good guy. You know what I mean? And we get a good guy that somebody else won't hire,
Yeah.
good girl, whatever. Somebody else will not hire this person because of their felony. But you know what? This is a great human resource. And so strictly from a business perspective, it made sense. So I did a lot. We did that at first, and we made a lot of mistakes, but we did. But you always do in business.
Yeah. So just to frame this a little bit, I was really shocked at the statistics around the prison population in the US. It was something like 1 in 5 Americans has a criminal history.
That's crazy.
But I guess the key statistic is the number of criminals, ex-criminals coming out of the system who really struggle to get a chance, to get a second chance, um,
Yeah.
to get back on their feet. And it becomes a self-perpetuating mess, doesn't it? Because you don't give that chance to somebody, the more likelihood, that gives more likelihood that they're going to find other ways to make money, go back to crime, rah, rah, rah. So you've got a
So
huge
many
problem.
aspects to that, right? It's like, okay, substance abuse, uh, all the mental issues that people have. Uh, and then, of course, relationships. I mean, people get out of prison, it's kind of like being reborn. Sometimes if you do a lot of time, if you have a little bit of time, maybe you don't really get disconnected that much. But the bottom line for me is that there's, we don't, I'm not a socialist type of guy. You know what I mean? I'm a guy who wants to give people opportunities, and that's what needs to be available for people. And, I've seen so many people do so well with opportunities, and that's kind of, so I don't know if you know, but I don't know if you ever heard of Constructing Hope. It's my pet charity. And I'm
Okay.
sorry if I took this the wrong direction for you,
No,
but
no, no. You go down that direction, please.
okay. I love uh, things that help people change their lives, and So Constructing Hope, and the reason I got so excited about them when I first found out about them, they're Portland based, but they teach people the trades. And if you think back, even though I wasn't in actual construction, I was in a way because I was making drawings. I was drawing plans, uh, and it changed my life. So Constructing Hope does that. It helps people. Most of them are guys coming out of prison, ladies coming out of prison, um, and they get a chance to go and actually learn a trade. I swear to God, it makes a huge difference. That kind of thing, giving a person a purpose. You know,
Mm,
some people don't. Some people are just a-holes, right? Some people are just
yeah.
crap. Some people are. It's going to be that way.
Yeah.
They won't accept help to get better because they're just not good people. Maybe they never will be. Okay, but when a person is ready, oh my God, it is so great. Not only to put them to work, not only to help their lives, but to help their families, the business they work for, the community. It changes everything, that one person.
Mm.
So Constructing Hope is like something I've put money into, I put time into, um, and I want it to grow much further than it is right now.
And right there, I mean, you're talking about Constructing Hope, which is a charity. And I don't know yet if you've, you know, found a way to connect that to business, but I just want to take you back to that.
Absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
Well, if you think about it, okay, I don't want to. I know you're trying to go somewhere here, but real quickly, it does totally connect to business because these people go out and make a better, they make a better workforce. Um, and so it helps the business, the the big or small contractors by getting really good people. And so plus it gives them on a certain level, it gives them some people appreciate that, and it makes a difference in the community.
so I'll tell you where I was going with that.
Sorry about
Right back to,
that.
well, no, perfect. I was going right back to the first question I put to you about love in business. And you might not want to use the word love, but when you were talking about Constructing Hope, just passion was coming through. And, you know, love, passion, clearly you care deeply about
Yeah,
this organization and, you know, how you're helping this organization. And bloody hell, that's love, right? You got to love
yeah.
some things in your life.
Uh, yeah, I need to figure that out. Love is, yeah. I told you at the beginning, love is like, wow, that's a tough one. But yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's go back to Dave's Killer Bread, because for people who don't know the story, I want them to understand about you know, where you went with the business with Second Chance Employment. So it sounds like it was kind of not accidental, but just a sort of casual approach to bringing people in. But you got to the point, didn't you, where a third of Dave's Killer Bread employees were second chance employment, so people with a criminal background.
That's right. We didn't set out going, hey, we're going to get 1/3 of our employees as ex-felons. It's like, to me, that's a dumb idea. So instead, we were growing pretty fast and we didn't have a problem with ex-felons working there because, hey, the guy who created this stuff was an ex-felon. So how can you hate ex-felons if I'm, an ex-felon?
Yeah.
So what it was is when you hire 50 people within a couple of months or a few months, you're looking at all these different resources to hire people, right? It's challenging, but we we did not set out, no, we're not going to hire ex-felons. We're not going to do this. Well, the temporary services that we were dealing with, they started sending us nothing but felons. I thought that was hilarious, but it wasn't working for me, because I'm like, we're gonna hire the best people. If they happen to be felons, great.
Yeah.
But that was always our mindset. And then 1/3 of our employees, by the time people started noticing us in media and all that stuff, they were ex-felons. So it wasn't
And there
like
you go.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we're going to hire the best people, but
Yeah.
because of you and your background and what you knew was possible, you weren't closed to the idea
Not
of
at all.
ex-felons,
No,
whereas most businesses would be, right?
Yeah, and I think that's one message that we always had. Is like, are you a fool? You know, just because you went to prison doesn't mean you're a bad person. All right.
Yeah.
In fact, somebody who's had a bad past might be more motivated than the other one. You know what I mean? So you got to look at that.
But it's also risky.
It is, yeah. But everything's risky, and you're always taking a risk when you get somebody. You know, how much time are you going to take to vet someone? But if you do a really good interview, you can find out a lot about people.
Yeah. And you don't just let their history be the determinant of whether they get in or not.
Absolutely, yeah. Same with, it doesn't matter if they're a felon or otherwise, but you still got to do that, right?
Your story has created an incredibly successful business. I know you have now exited that business, but just for our listeners as well, particularly the ones in Australia who may not know, Dave's Killer Bread sold to Freedom Foods for how much?
It was to Flowers Foods for
Flowers.
275 million. I think that was a real bargain. Looking back, I should have asked for more.
Yeah, and you may well have got that, but just to achieve that, with the journey you've been on, is something you must. I mean, not just the money, right? But what you've created, the opportunity you've created for others. How does that make you feel?
That feels great. I'm still doing it. That's something I will never stop doing, is passing on the good that I have been experienced myself. You know.
Yeah. Well, it seems like your story has a lot of twists and turns to run through yet, and
God, I hope not too many more, man. I like to straight ahead. I'd like to just have this straight and narrow kind
coasting
of
down the hill, right?
Yeah.
With the experience you've gained and the lessons you've learned, and you know, I know you've only shared a small part of that here on this podcast today, and I hope those seeds that you've shared can help inspire some other businesses to travel the road less traveled. I think for me, the thing about your story and the Dave's Killer Bread story that really resonates is it is such a human story. Okay, it's just human. It's not a fairy tale. It is. It has the twists and the turns. It's got the hurrah moments, you know. But that's not the end of the story, and that's what makes it. That's what makes it human. You don't know what the ending is going to look like, but you do know that people are cheering on from the sidelines, because
I love that.
all we're doing is trying, right? We're just trying our best.
Yeah. Well, I think it's oversimplification, but the hero's journey.
Yeah.
That's what we're all on, right? In a sense, and there's like an arc of like you know success and failure and all that stuff, and then we come away with something meaningful, and that's my life.
Mm. It's your story, and people connect with stories because people connect with people, humans, and what they're
People have
capable
stories.
of.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So what do you think is next for you?
I'm already, doing more than I want to. Uh,
You mentioned a
I
book. You mentioned you might have to write a book.
yeah. Sure. I have, if I feel compelled, if I need a ghostwriter. I can write fine, but I need a ghostwriter to pull it out of me. You know what I mean? If I find the right ghostwriter, I might do it. And then I do have somebody that wants. I don't know if you ever heard of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That's
No.
like in the U.S. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is probably, if you think about Seinfeld. I know you know Seinfeld.
Mm-hmm.
Seinfeld was like the longest running show and all that kind of stuff. But now it's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and it's very funny, but it's really dark. Anyway, these guys are one of the guys there and his wife wants to, and we've signed papers to work on a movie. So I don't know if it'll happen or not, but I think a movie would be fantastic. But
So before we close this out, I'd just love to hear from you this experience, your life experience, to now, looking at it through the business lens. How, what have you learnt that might help inspire other people who are starting their business journey or who are leading a company, a business now? Like, what can you share with them based on your own experience?
well, my experience is must be honest. You must be passionate. You can't. Don't take this as preaching because I'm certainly not a preacher, but you got to believe in what you're doing. Uh, if you can enjoy the journey, that's the best thing you can have. If you can just enjoy the process of creating business, uh, running a business, developing a business, and developing a brand, that's the most beautiful thing in the world. Um, you gotta be humble, because if you're humble enough, uh, you find the right people to help you. It's like I need somebody to be a great accountant. I've had very good luck with an accountant. I mean, I could go and spend all my time learning to be an accountant, but I'm not gonna. It's not gonna happen. You know, so you got to be humble enough to say, I want this person, that person, that person, and be able to listen to those people.
Okay, Dave, before we sign off, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best place for them to do that?
Go to YouTube and check out Dave Dahl on YouTube.
DAHL?
Yeah.
Yep.
And you can go to Facebook and check out Dave Dahl. There's a couple different pages there, but the best way would probably be to go to davedahl360.com.
Brilliant. And we'll share those links in the show notes as well. Dave, thank you so much for coming on this podcast, for sharing your time, sharing some of your story. It's such a big story, and I hope we've been able to pull out at least some elements of it to give people in business, leaders, employees, and just people generally, inspiration on, how to create a bit more meaning in their lives through their businesses.
I think meaning is the most important word that you just said. It's meaning, it's passion, it's drive. Drive is overused, but I would say you gotta love what you do. You just gotta love what you do. And I love what I do now, even if it's not as good as it was. The Dave's Killer Bread days, those days were, I don't know if I can ever repeat that, but I love what I do. And that's what matters.
You said it, right? You said it at the end. Love. Woohoo!
Nice.
We got there. Dave, thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the For Love and Money podcast. If you'd like to take a deeper dive into the purpose movement, visit us at thecauseeffect.com.au. And remember, doing good is good for business. So if you're not doing good, then what are you doing?